folks, this is Totally and welcome to some more game dev. Back again today, second stream. First stream we got this kind of test room set up, what I've been referring to as the combat grounds, and today we're going to be continuing, or with this stream we're going to be continuing with kind of setting this up. So all of these enemies are basically kind of in a non-responsive state when we first start here because they have no patrol path, which is kind of messing with their AI, but we can fight and defeat them, and then we can walk over here and click this interact to spawn a new one. When they spawn in, they do spawn in and try and detect the player, and so then they will immediately start combat at that point. But this is kind of just a basic setup so that we can get an idea of like, what does it feel like to fight so many slimes, then go in and maybe unlock a new ability, come back out and keep fighting those slimes. Just making it more easy to test some of this kind of functionality. And potentially, as I start getting into more elaborate enemy behaviors, being able to set up little scenes like this where we can fight the same enemy over and over again and get an idea of if its behavior logic is working correctly is going to be very handy. So that all being said, next steps are, I think, dealing with dying, because right now I think if we were to attack this boar and then have it attack us by waiting a few turns, it will destroy us and it will send us back to the goddess realm, because that's the default functionality. But for the sake of this kind of combat test space, I kind of want to hack together something where instead it'll send us back to this room and start us at the front if we die. So we can kind of get a better idea of the flow without having to leave this area essentially, or leave beyond the normal death animation. So that all being said, I feel like the easiest place to add some hacky logic for this is going to be inside of the load global scene, which is going to check to see if we are essentially in a state where we're loading this scene directly. And if we're loading this scene directly, we could add a bit of logic in here that should never get run otherwise, that I guess toggles something to say, instead of going back to the goddess realm, just come back here. So if we look at the backend state manager and we look at what happens when we run out of time and a run ends, there must be a cutscene, right? We looked at this literally a few hours ago in the previous stream. This is where the out of time stuff comes in. Yeah, out of time triggers this cutscene, or it triggers the player death cutscene. So what does that death cutscene look like? Might be easier just to find it rather than search for it. So somewhere in here we need to track down the cutscene player death. So this has the player do a whole bunch of like fun, well, actually this one here is just making the fog get more like dark so it looks like the world is ending is the idea, and then cutting back to the goddess realm. So realistically we need we don't even need another cutscene. We just need to play the reset combat ground cutscene that we already set up last stream to play when we exit from this tile. We just need to be using this on player death. So on player death, or out of time, really either of these situations, if we are in the combat scene, use the debug version. Okay, so if we just add a public bool in combat grounds, and then we check if in combat grounds, not in combat grounds, do this, else trigger the reset on death cutscene. And then do the same thing for player death. And then inside of the load global scene, you know what? I don't even think it makes sense to do that in here. I think we could just add another script specifically in this. In this scene that just does this debug work for us. So it's under the debug folder. Let's do combat grounds scene. Okay, come on. And then after Unity has a bit of a think, we just add this here, and then on start, backend state manager dot instance dot combat grounds equals true. I'm going to do the same logic here, just to make sure that everything is finished loading. We're going to make a new function here, which is wait for scene load. And this is mostly just going to wait for This one's a little tricky, actually. The problem is when we first load up the game, if I just set this immediately, I don't know whether or not this backend state manager will exist yet. So I kind of need to make sure that the load is done here. Yeah, like at this point we should be ready. Okay, I'm gonna keep it real simple. We're just gonna add it in here. But we're just gonna add a bool for is combat grounds, which will be false for every other scene except for this one. And if it is this one, we will run this code. Sure. And then we can delete this guy. It's not a big add. It shouldn't be too cumbersome to add that in. And then this tick box should never get changed ever again in any other scene. Okay, so that all being true, we should be able to run out of time or die to an enemy, and after that we should reset back into the scene immediately. So hit this boar, let it take its turn, Didn't like some aspects of that. Mainly, it's happening way too fast, and we're not even done some of the setup yet. Okay. I think we will make a alternate version of player death. Combat grounds. Player death. And from this one, we'll make sure to run the tool that parses it into our JSON files. And if we use this, here, this should give enough time for the rest of the combat to finish before kicking us out. We just need to make sure that we change it from going to the Goddess Realm to bounce, revival entrance, and we'll see if we can get away with using the scene transition instead of the cloud transition. Give that a try. Still fundamentally complaining about a lot of stuff. Mostly to do with the UI. Interesting. But we don't see these complaints normally. Only in this realm. It doesn't look like any of these errors are causing the game to break though. Like, yeah, it's spewing a lot of being upset, but this is never going to be in the real game anyways. This should only ever be a debug tool for me. So if it's not breaking in an actual, like, fundamental way that, like, affects my testing, it should be fine. Okay. Cool. I'm going to say that's fine. I might dig into those errors more off camera, but I'm going to say for the purposes of moving forward, those are okay. And we will ignore them for now. In the meantime, I guess, what are we doing next? So we have the ability to access the skill screen, buy some upgrades. We can walk over, fight each of the 3 enemy types that we currently have animations, and that's not actually true. I was gonna say the 3 enemies we have animations for, but there's actually another enemy type. This bat. I have not run the bat in a long time. Does it still work? This was one of the first enemies that Drixie built, but then we moved more towards the slime and the boar for like the intro area, because the bat felt like it might be more useful in like a dungeon or potentially some later areas that might have caves or something. So we just kind of moved it off to one side, but I am curious. Oh, it does not function. Specifically, it's mad. Oh, about a faux state machine. Oh, that's interesting. So this is so old, it doesn't have a faux state machine on it, which is pretty fundamental. Well, what's neat here is that we should be able to just make a clone of this basic enemy container and call this one Pt.2. And then Pt.2 just needs to use the bat animation formatter. So we come into here, scroll up to find the animations. There should be one for the bat that's now open, and there is. And if we open up this stuff, go into player sprites, sprite renderer, and swap out the bat here, that should be all we need to do to get a new enemy that has all the correct components, but with the bat animations, unless there's something else more fundamentally wrong here. And then we might be able to just delete the old version, because it looks like it's outdated anyways. Does this one load up? It does look like it does. It does look like it does. It does look like it is loading. Nope, that sentence still sounds weird. I don't even think this is the right enemy either. Because this is the bat, but didn't Drixie make... Yeah, the Void Eye. The Void Eye was cooler. Mostly because it has more heavy modifications. The bat is like a simple pixelization of a acid store enemy, I think. Whereas the Void Bat had some heavy modifications or some amount of modifications to it to make it more ours, more unique. This one. Does this still work? Yeah, okay, cool. Does it attack? It does. Okay, cool. This is technically another enemy type. In fact, what's probably easiest is rather than even deleting the bat right now, which honestly I probably still should, but I'm going to leave it and call this one here Void Bat, because it's a more accurate name, because that's what it's actually the art asset it's using. And then I think we'll put this one back to Mini Slime, and then we're gonna grab the boar spawn, and we're gonna make another spawn down here. 1, 2, 2 apart, it looks like is what I'm doing here. I might want to rearrange these at some point, but for the time being, this layout is fine. It's passable. Let's change this to spawn Void Bat. Void Bat. We're going to need to make a new sequence for this. That's going to be somewhere around here. Here. Void Bat. Void Bat. parse that in. Name this void bat. For the entity name, oh, I guess technically these are, we've been saying the name of the monster and then spawn. So void bat spawn, and then that will go in here as the entity that we want to spawn on. Cool. See if I set all that up correctly. There's a couple of different steps, but honestly not too bad to get a respawning enemy in. Oh, I forgot to mention shortly before stream started, I did fix the issue we saw at the end of the last stream where the status bars weren't showing up after an enemy was killed. That was a bit of a hack, but the status bars are generated all in the moment the map loads. So I had to write a little bit of logic inside of the status bar checking system to just always be looping through, and if there's an enemy that doesn't have a status bar hooked up to it, it just adds one. Again, we're kind of hacking this together a little bit. Before I check in, I might revisit and modify this a little bit more to be more clean, but I don't know, I'm just kind of getting the clay down, and we'll kind of figure out what a better layout is for this later. Putting pen to paper is another way, maybe a better metaphor, and we'll rewrite and refactor once I'm more happy. Cool. So that's working, and now if we die to this boar, loads back up, and then if we run out of time, that also loads back up. 42 damage, 29, almost one-shotting, almost one-shotting, and then here 8. Yeah, so this guy, I gave the boar a ton of stats. He's a real derpy lad. His animation speed for movement needs to be increased significantly. Hello, Sickest Link. How long have you been working on this? That's a complicated question. Technically speaking, me and my wife Drixie have been working on this engine, this art style, this like a lot of this code for 5 years. Coming on 5, no, it's 5.5 now, I guess technically, because we started with a separate game first for like 2.5 years, 3 years, called Heir of Embers, which was more of a like JRPG turn-based attack, you know, everyone lines up and just fights kind of game. And then that thing we felt like was going to take 10 years to build because of the amount of content we wanted to create. So then about 2 years ago, we swapped over and took all the art or a lot of the art learnings and a lot of the core JRPG elements, and then kind of built this more tile-based tactical system. And so we've been building up on this. I feel like we're only within the last few months actually getting to the point where I'm starting to feel like we actually are having more of a game and not just a series of systems. But I've spent a long time just building tools to make content creation as quick and easy as possible, both on the art side and on the design side. Today we're mostly working on like a little combat simulation room so that we can kind of very easily and quickly get a bunch of stat nodes unlocked and then respawn specific enemies so that we can test like our damage numbers, how much more damage we're doing, how much more damage we're taking. I have like formulas for all this stuff in like a spreadsheet that we can also kind of look at or that I can like balance against, but there's something really nice about being able to have this kind of space where we can just like fight enemies and respawn them. It's also going to be helpful when we start figuring out like our progression system for our skills. Right now when we perform an attack, it like gives so much XP on successful hit and a bit of extra bonus XP for killing an enemy. I feel like just getting a handle on that progression system is going to be helpful as well, which will be easier to do here. Oh wow, the art looks awesome, says Sickest Link. Thank you. It's been a long time. We've been trying to figure out how to make this all look correct for that. Like, that was probably a lot of like the years of development, was just kind of getting Unity to handle all of this stuff correctly. So like when this texture comes in, it like trying to make it so that every single pixel that Trixie places down is exactly like rendered correctly, especially because like we have like like an isometric camera in orthographic, but having it so that based off of the exact distance away from the camera, or not really distance, but like the position, making it so that it renders every pixel correctly has been a journey, as well as kind of figuring out this whole isometric billboarding process. Okay, so we have this with each of our enemies that we currently have. I want to switch over to making this boar move a little bit faster, because this movement speed is a bit silly. Just way too slow. So where is that boar located? That's going to be up here in the art section. So if we open that up, wild boar, open that in Sprite, and then that should just be this walk loop. What is the frame rate of each of these? It's default to 100. So if we just drag over here and then grab the mini slime for reference, mini slime, bubble slime? Bubble slime, sure, we'll go with that one. Bubble slime, the bigger one. What is the walk speed for you? Walk loop. Your walk frames are 35. Is that consistent? Looking here in the bottom left, it looks like it's 35 across the board. We don't have any special timing on that. So if we just come into here and change all of these frame properties to 35, and then we will export this plus the JSON file, type array, packed should be fine. This is going to the right spot. Yeah, we'll export all that. So we're going to export all of that information. And then we will slice and anim everything. Hopefully that doesn't break the whole game. But this is basically just reading that JSON file and kind of slicing the PNG into the right size for every single frame that we just exported. Yeah, and now he's moving more quickly, but that kind of looks bad. Now he's moving too quickly. Let's take another look at that in Sprite. Probably should have hit run on this once or twice just to see. This might need Drixie's help. It doesn't look like this is going to be a straightforward fix. I thought it would just be increasing that movement speed, but it looks now like he's just moving. The legs are moving way too fast as he moves between the tiles. But the movement speed between the tiles is based off the length of time it takes for this animation to play. Interesting. We might need to relook at this animation because it might not work. I'm going to try just moving the speed back up to 50, and then we'll re-export stuff again and see if that's looking better. Bring back up Unity. Sickest Link says, I'm currently trying to make a pixel art tower defense game, and I'm learning a lot in the process. I'm also using Unity. Yeah, I feel like Unity fights on the pixel stuff pretty consistently, but I'm also trying to do something crazy with like isometric, which is even more difficult. I think if you're using like Unity's like tile stuff, the more recent kind of tools that have come out in the last few years, it can be a lot easier. But a lot of the stuff I've tried to do is pretty unique, which means I don't have a ton of helpful information, or generically helpful information, if that makes sense. Come on, Unity. Do the thinking. I believe that you can go faster. Okay, let's trigger this boar to fight. Let's run away. Yeah, it just feels like there's too much leg movement. And because the whole animation needs to play in order for the enemy to move between one tile, it just feels like his legs are moving too much for one tile of movement. So we might just need a like less dramatic animation. Yeah, it feels like this would make more sense if he was moving like 2 tiles and playing the whole animation over that 2 tiles. But for moving 1 tile, it's just too intense of a movement. Also, why is he going to -1? Oh, I think that means he's not finding a valid action because I'm too far away. And so he's just moving 1 tile towards me because he didn't find anything valid to do. This is where we're going to have to start looking at the behaviors and modifying their attack behaviors a little bit more to handle all of those situations to make sure that there's always something valid for him to be doing. Okay, let's minimize down this folder and some of these floors. In fact, we probably shouldn't need anything in there right now. What do I want to do next? So we have this space now created so that I can more easily test. But what am I testing? I guess we could take a look at our skill tree system and maybe kind of tune some of those numbers a little bit. Let's go into our debug and let's get rid of all the auto unlocking that we currently have. Inside of combat test, let's make it so that there are no nodes that we have unlocked by default. And then in our current run, through our first chapter, we end up fighting, I believe, 3 slimes before we end up restarting the run, going back to the goddess realm and then beginning again. So if we fight 3 of these, so we're just going to take that one out, spawn a new one, fight the next one, spawn a third one. This is how much experience we should have after the first run, which is only 1 skill point, it looks like. So after 1 run, we only get to buy 1 skill, which is strength +1. And then we come back in, we'll have to fight 3 more slimes. But with that 1 point of strength, we're not quite able to one-shot them, but we're getting close. And on that second run, we would be able to kill 3 more. And did I gain like 1 more point? Yeah. I feel like I want more, because what we just simulated there was 2 runs, and each run, well, how long does a run take? So if we start in the very beginning, Where's a timer? I'm going to set a clock timer. I want to think about this. I'm going to set this up over here on one side. Stopwatch. Reset. We'll start that. Okay. So we begin a new run. We zap in. We're told we don't have any weapons, because technically I'm in a debug state where I have slash and bash, but I shouldn't have any skills yet. We walk past here. These should not be starting revealed. That's another debug state that I left on. We bypass the first adventurer. And head over here. We would pick up our first sword, which we don't really need to do because we already have slash, but I'll do it anyways. And then head up this way. This is where we'd run into our first slime. And then this map, I believe, is where we have 2 slimes. Yeah, this one has the 2. That gets us our first skill point slash level 2. Oh, we have this big slime here. I forgot that we have a big slime currently at this location. I don't know if I want this one here. I might end up removing it. Yeah, we don't even win that fight right now. But that puts me at about 2 minutes to get through that first run. Realistically, if I had have bypassed... Oh, it didn't load these tiles. Oh, that's a different bug. Huh. So 2 minutes to get past those first few enemies. And I get 1 skill point? No, we need to tweak this a little bit. So let's go into... Let's go look at our progression system. That'll be in our units persistent data. In here. Whenever we perform an attack, something in here is updating... our skill points. Where is that happening? Is it in the ability spec that we level up? Experience. That looks right. This is save loading it. Tally experience. Grant experience. Okay. So this... Right. Okay, so when we perform an attack, we'll tell that specific ability, whether it's slash or bash, that it has gained some amount of experience. That experience will come into here. We'll start a coroutine which will tally it, because there used to be some UI that represented this. That no longer happens, but basically we're going to get that experience incremented into here. And then when the required experience... When the experience is greater than or equal to the required experience, we give you a skill point. And then we do some level up notifications, which is where we're seeing slash level 2 show up. But that required experience used to be set on a formula, but in order to simplify things, I made it just 100. I think I want to go back to it being a formula. So this is saying skill points gained is equal to skill points plus skill points used. And then for all my skill points gained, I'm multiplying that by 25 and then adding 0. So this isn't exponential, this is linear growth. That might be fine, because this is not based off of like a number of experience points that we're gaining. It's really based off of the number of hits that we're doing. So having it be linear growth may be fine because it's self-capping, because as you start one-shotting enemies, you'll start getting less and less experience per fight, essentially. Okay, I'm going to leave it linear. That seems like it might be okay. How much experience are we currently giving? If we go to our hit effect in here, when we hit an enemy, we do experience granted. Here. We grant experience 15 on not defeating. If it is defeated, we give 25. And if we miss, which doesn't happen very often, we give only 5 XP. So on defeating an enemy, we would gain 1 level. But we have to hit them twice. So if, in the current setup, you would hit them once for 15, not level up, hit them again for 25, you'd gain a total of 40, 15 points would carry over. I need to write a spreadsheet for this. Okay, how do we want to do this? Let's just do 1, 2, 3. Should be smart enough to continue the sequence. Okay, and then we can say that this is our levels. And then we can say experience required is going to be equal to this value times 25. That's what our current formula is. Sure, autofill, thank you. And then we know that we get experience per hit. We get 15. And then these don't need to be in columns. They can be over here. In fact, I'll lay them out this way so it's a little bit different. And then we'll also extend this a little bit. And this is experience per defeat. And that's 25. So if we do this value, if we do this value divided by defeat, and then right, this needs to be $signs. Oh, that's funny. Okay, that makes a ton of sense, but defeated enemies required is going to be equal to the level, because we're timesing by 25. If we divide by 25, which is the amount of experience we're giving per defeat, we get back basically our level as a number. So then if we do the same idea, but for hits, and then this also needs to be for this one. This becomes number of, in fact, let's do This is the number of times we need to hit enemies in order to level up. The problem is that most enemies go from this to this. So in the most simple experience, right now anyways, to kill a mini slime requires one hit, which gives us 15, and then another hit that gives us 25. So at its most basic form, that's going to be 40. So if we then insert another column to the left, and this is going to be a more accurate version, then I want the formula, thank you. This is still not accurate enough, because really we should be doing like compounding, because this isn't taking into account the fact that we have carryover from the previous experience. Yeah, this is actually kind of difficult to simulate. Let's see here. This value minus this value. We need a running tally. I guess what we could also do is this formula could be like that. So now this is experienced total required. So this is the total amount of experience you would need. And then this formula makes more sense then. I forgot my dollar signs. So assuming my strength doesn't change, and we don't need to hit the enemy multiple times, then it would take us (1.8) enemies to get to level 2, and then (3.75) enemies to get to level 3. And this gets worse as we get stronger, because as we get stronger, eventually we'll be one-shotting the enemies, and we'll go to 25 per kill instead of a hit and then a defeat. Interesting. So even in this setup, I kind of want to see it play out. But I think, if I'm understanding how this is going to math, we'll end up with 2 skill points after defeating 3 slimes. And then on the next run, we'll get 1 skill point nearly instantaneously. So we immediately gained a level on first hit. That doesn't make sense. Okay, something's immediately wrong. Current formula was that we start at 0 experience required, so we need to add 1. There's probably better ways of doing this, but I'm riffing. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so this should give us no level up. Good. This should level us up. Good. Respawn. No level. That seems accurate. And then we will gain a level on this kill. And this shouldn't give us a level, but on the 4th slime, we do. Okay. This still feels too slow to me. Yeah. I'm going to change it. Let's see what happens if we change it to 15. So now on the first hit, we'll get a gain a level. And if we want to get a rough estimate, XP increase 15. Let's make this a cell so that we can more easily modify it. And then make sure we do this. And then drag. Actually, we want to have a slightly different formula for the second one onwards, so we'll do it like this. There we go. So now we'll gain a level on the first hit. We'll gain 2 levels by the time we hit kill one enemy and a little bit. So I would guess probably kill one enemy, hit another enemy. And then we'll gain 3 on 2 defeats in a little bit. So we'll gain 3 skill points on the first run with this setup. How this needs to like eventually slow down though. How quickly does it slow down? We might want an exponential graph here. At least a little bit of exponentiality to it. I feel like this is still like going from like, because this is total XP needed. So this is all need 29 defeats, and this is all need 34. So this is 5 extra defeated enemies, which again, this formula is currently this one, so that's 1 hit, 1 defeat. So yeah, we get an experience just on our first attack, and then we'll get an experience on our first hit here, if I'm understanding the sheet. Yep. And then This one will get an experience. It's enough to buy a couple of different upgrades. Then we can come over here and fight this enemy. And then bigger enemies don't give more experience. You just get more experience for hitting. Yeah, so it took 2 big slimes to get the next level up there. These are still 2 hitting, so actually it still works out to about the same. This one took 3, so that was technically 55 experience gain from that enemy instead of 40. Yeah, so after we killed 3 big slimes, we got 3 more experience on that run. And these enemies aren't really doing much damage to us at all, because we can end up killing them before they even get attacks in at this point with this many upgrades. Okay. And that slash level 8, we've gotten basically enough skill points to fully unlock that tech tree at this point. What's interesting is this is also per skill. So that was all the skill points for slash, and at this point I can't really upgrade slash any further, but I can upgrade bash still, but it's starting on a new track. So even just 1 hit is enough to level bash up. And then it slows down a little bit. Yeah, and basically I can't get any more stat increases from using slash until I unlock slash level 2. And I have to now start using bash if I want to keep getting upgrades. And then we're thinking about gating slash level 2 on like certain either game progress or like item requirements. So you'd be stuck at this point having to start using bash more in order to actually level it up. Okay, interesting. I think I like this more. I like the idea that I would do a run, kill 3 mini slimes, and get like 3 skill points that I can come back and spend on this upgrade tree. If that's the case, I think I want to make the big slime more dangerous then. I think we should give you a good amount of these upgrades. I think that's fair that you would get some like strength, defense, things to make the little slimes basically pushovers. But I actually think if we're going to give you that many skill points and that much stats that quickly, I think this enemy right now with no upgrades is doing 13 damage. And we're doing 6, which is fine. It feels difficult, but I almost feel like it should be even more punishing. Yeah, it's like, if you want to kill 1 enemy, let's try that. What if we came in and we wanted to fight 1 green slime before we bought any upgrades? What would that feel like? With 55 health. We gain 1 level in slash right away. We gain another level in slash just by hitting them. By the time we defeat one enemy, we end up getting a slash level 4, which is equivalent to basically killing 3 mini slimes, because it just takes that many hits to take them out. And we're left with, honestly, our health isn't so bad. I guess it depends on what behavior the enemy chose. There, he mostly chose red attacks, which are slow and don't do a ton of damage. Here, he's choosing green, which is going to knock us down much more quickly. Yeah, it really depends on what type of attack they end up choosing to do. Yeah, because as soon as they do a red, it's not very much at all. Can we see what is the power difference between a green and a red for the amount of extra turns it takes right now? That might just be a bad tuning setup. Let's see here. Slime. When you do your patterns, you're doing randomized between these attacks if they're possible. So this is the basic one. This is the stronger one. And it's doing AI Smash. And currently AI Smash has a power of 15. And the AI Attack is the basic one, I assume. Yeah, and this one doesn't even have a power associated with it. So that means it's defaulting? Actually, what happens if it doesn't have a power associated with it? I would imagine the damage formula would be broken in that situation. Oh, if it finds that there's no power or it's been set to 0, which I think is what happens if it tries to get a property that doesn't exist, it gets defaulted to 10. Yeah, so the difference between the green hit, which costs 2 actions or 2 turns to perform, and the red one that costs 5 is just 5 extra power. So this should be closer to 25 then. I don't know if that's like a broad change that I need, or if like I need to rethink about how I'm doing these attack patterns. It's possible that like we want to make these enemies behave more smartly. More smartly? Yeah, more smartly. Those are the words we want to choose to describe that sentence. So now it's doing a red attack, but with way more power. It was doing 10 damage to us before, now it's doing close to 24. Well, that's actually interesting that with their base formulas, the power on the starting stats are almost equivalent to the amount of damage they're doing. That's kind of just a weird fluke of the numbers, though. Yeah, now the enemy feels more dangerous again. I think broadly, I still want to find a way to make Bash feel more interesting. Like, Slash is just faster to perform and does less damage, but definitely feels like I can get multiple hits in, even if it's lower. It just feels like Bash doesn't have enough utility at this point. It's just a heavier hit that takes longer. And it's just not usually worth the time. Do we have... I think I have a bit of debug settings on. Or I was trying some longer time for how long the ticks are when the enemy... When, like, you're performing an action, there's that little blue progress bar that appears above your head. I feel like I had tweaked that number up a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I want to try reverting that change. I'm just trying to track it down now. What file was that in? Combined turn. Combined turn combat state. 0.5? Yeah, I want to turn this back down to 0.25. See how that feels. Because right now, each pip of the blue disappearing is that timer value I was just setting. So that means that it was taking 2 seconds to perform the bash attack. I feel like the amount of time each tick should be not like, sorry, how do I say this? I think each tick shouldn't have its own time. I think the total number of ticks it's going to take to perform your action should be consistent. So if it takes 2 seconds to perform a slash, or even 1 second, it should take that same 1 second to perform a bash. It's going to require retweaking some stuff though. Interesting. Just resetting my health. And the small ones become pushovers, but they're still worth hitting because we get a little bit of, like, we get experience for using our attacks, not from killing enemies. So it's worth taking out the little ones. If we use a bash, can we one-hit this enemy before they get a chance to go? We can. If we do 2 slashes, will that also kill? Sometimes. I bet you that is somewhat variable though. Yeah, depending on the roll of the damage, sometimes it might be 3. Whereas bash, I think, would guarantee get the kill. And now, again, I'm at a point where if I'm making decisions about whether or not to use slash or bash, technically I want to prioritize bash because I can't get any more stats out of the slash ability. So I want to keep trying to level up bash because it's going to give me more stats to make me more tanky in this situation, but eventually I'll get more strength. I feel like I'm starting to make decisions, and I feel like my decisions actually start to feel like they're making some amount of progress. Bash is still way too slow. Like, the time it takes for each of those to tick down is just way too much. So we gain another couple levels. And come in here, we can buy an increase to the power of this ability, which I think is actually pretty huge. I think the power increase is nuts. I think I kind of penciled that in at some point, but I think... Oh no, 60 is a jump, because I think we were doing 45 before, but still not too crazy. And then with that last point, we've been able to get 1 more point of strength. So with 1 bash versus this boar who has really high defense, we're only doing 25. Get a slash in for 8. And even with all our defense increases, this boar is still doing 123. So I may have cranked the stats on the boar a little too high, or we may need to see about giving more stat increases throughout the grid. Drixie with the stretch redeem. Yeah, sure, yeah. Let's go to standing desk mode. I'll be back in a second. All right, we've activated standing mode, which honestly, a good stretch is not a bad idea at this point. Let's switch back to this screen. All right, so I like the rhythm of these, like making it so the amount of like experience needed is growing over time rather than being fixed. Means that we're gaining a lot of skill points early on that we can come in here and upgrade, and then it slows down a little bit, but it still feels like after we kill a couple of enemies we can still come back and get 1 or 2 more stat nodes, whether it's for slash or for bash. And at the point where we've maxed out all of the nodes is starting to feel kind of interesting and fun, where I have to make some decisions about what I want to put points into next. And then, yeah, I kind of just cranked up the boar's stats a bit to make him more threatening. And I think I just need to do an actual pass and not just double them or whatever I did. Because this, even with all of our upgrades for everything we can get at this point, still one-shotting us. Defense does not matter. Out of curiosity, what is our defense now? 11. So we got... It's these ones. That's 1 point of defense there. 2. So a grand total of 4 defense. So we went from defense 7 at the start of the game to defense 11. Yeah, so it's just not enough to be able to deal with an enemy of this big of a stat increase. Because what did we put it to? Let's look at the boar. We're basically 11 across the board now on all of our stats, and the boar is, yeah, 14 and 18. Those numbers don't quite add up though. Let's bring up our damage formula sheet. If the enemy has an attack of 14, let's assume it's a power of 25. versus our defense of 11. Oh yeah, no, 118. Because it was doing the red attack, which would be the 25 that we just bumped up. So how much defense would we need to get in order to actually be able to sustain that hit? Like, we have 60 HP, so we would need to get down to... We would need to get at least 4 more points of defense so that we could take 1 hit from a boar without immediately dying. And if we could get up to like 20, 21, realistically 23, we could take 2 hits. But if we throw in defend, combat, combat test, if we give ourselves the defend stat or defend ability, I think that changes the numbers quite a bit, because that's really what we've been kind of thinking about when we've been building up chapter 1, is like, we think the shield and getting that defend ability is when the combat really is going to become more interesting. Like, slash and bash are fine, they're like slightly different attacks, like one's light, one's heavy, they have slightly different cost ratios, but for the most part they're the same thing. Let's get back to where we were by just unlocking all of these. I'm not sure why Unity wants to exit play mode. I guess it's just hitting control. Okay, so if we buy every stat upgrade, and then just to make sure everything is, you know, healed up and everything's good, we're gonna reset. Yeah, so we'll have 70 HP at this point. So actually a little more than I was kind of just calculating. And if we do bash here, we can do a defend. Oh, right. Yeah, defending halves the damage. And then if we defend here, we're going to parry because it was an exact number of turns before they went. And now they're stunned for a turn, so we can get a slash in pretty safely. And then we can parry again. They're stunned for a turn. We can get another slash in. We can parry. And I think this becomes an infinite loop where maybe we would want to have them change up their behavior so that they don't just keep trying to do the same 3 pip attack after being stunned, because it lets us perfectly line up our parries. But we can defeat them with defend. It's brutal for that like first hit, and we have to, even if we don't parry, we still need to be defending that first attack damage. If we defend here, yeah, we can still parry if we move, so we can actually just infinite parry this, which is maybe a problem in and of itself in some regards. We do need to use slash. We can't fit a bash in, so I think I do want to change the behavior of the boar so that it's not just so one note. Like, after it gets stunned, maybe it has the want to run away from the player and then do like a charge where it moves like several like squares and does like a big heavy hit that maybe can't be parried or something like that. Or maybe it can be defended but it's not parryable. I don't know. It feels like right now that just getting into that rhythm of just like, you can't hurt me. But maybe that's fun. Maybe the you can't hurt me is fun after this boar is like way too strong, it does way too much damage, there's no way to defeat it, and then you get this defend ability, and now all of a sudden you can kind of get into a state where you're like, nope, now you can't touch me. I'm just going to keep parrying your attacks as long as I make sure to do parry or slash parry, or defend, I guess technically. I can just defeat this boar without a problem, and maybe that's fine. And then when we get into like later enemies, maybe some of the later enemies become more challenging and they have things that make it so that you can't just like perma parry them. They're maybe a little smarter than the boar. But if I'm going to have this boar be kind of a roadblock for the first few runs of the game, as you're kind of getting used to things and like trying to navigate, and you keep running into these boars that keep one-shotting you, being able to like stun lock it in this way, maybe that's fine. It's just this question of like, do we want combat to ever be boring, even if it is fun? And I don't quite know the answer to that. Okay. I'm liking this space though as like just a testing ground. It feels like all the enemies are queued up and they're just hanging out doing their thing. And if after I finish defeating one, if I want, I can like walk away. I can go upgrade, buy some things, and then come back over, fight a different enemy. And then if I want to get the boar back, I can just respawn it. Yeah, that's a heavy hit. Like, defend is only halving it to make it like reasonable to survive. We could also make parry limited. Trixie and I have been talking about using these like these 6 kind of pips underneath your health as kind of like almost like a limit break system of some kind, or like an MP system, depending on how you want to think about it. But like have it so that as you move around the world, these fill in slowly. And then once you have 1 pip fully full, we were thinking about having it so that certain abilities will unlock like combo hits. So slash is fast, and so you might be able to do a slash, and then after you perform the slash, you get like a little prompt above your head, and if you time the attack correctly, you can get a second slash in without any charge time at all, but it uses one of these like little pips. Maybe parry is the same thing, where like you can defend an attack, and if you perfectly line it up so that the enemy would attack you on the final turn of your defend, you parry, but it uses one of these pips, and if you run out of these pips, you can still defend to take half damage, but you won't be able to actually get the perfect parry. It's a way we could make it so that you can't infinitely get into these states. I think the enemy missed. At some point we lost the miss text. It doesn't say miss when the enemy misses you. It just doesn't show anything now. I'm gonna figure out what's going on with that. I'm gonna write that one down. Where's my bug list? Let's see. Miss text is missing. There's another one that we saw. Don't remember. There was another bug I meant to write down, but I'll see it again, I'm sure. Boar's idol is kind of poppy too. I think this just needs to go away. It's not just that. It feels like the way that... Feels like this is all down, and then this just pops back up. It almost feels like this idol needs to go like forward and then backwards so that it has more of like a breathe. That's some feedback for Trixie. Sorry, I was just standing here looking at the boar and being like, something's not quite right there. But we haven't really seen the boar on screen at all. I'm just starting to get to the point where the boar is like in some of our cutscenes and is actually doing combat. So it's fair that we haven't necessarily done a refinement pass on it. It's art that Trixie has made a while ago and I have just left sit in the background because it just wasn't ready, or the game wasn't ready to have it yet. Okay. I feel drained. I think this was helpful. I think like changing up the experience curve, taking a look at some of these like unlock grids and thinking about like how many stat points we're getting and like what some of those stat points are even doing for us. I think that's all been very helpful. Having this ability to respawn enemies and this little space where we can just like fight enemies infinitely and walk over, upgrade, walk back, fight some more. I think this is working really well for allowing me to quickly and easily iterate over combat and progression systems. But I'm feeling pretty done for this evening. So I'm going to call it here a little bit early. Normally we go for another half an hour, but I'm going to take some time and relax and think on some of this stuff. Because I think, okay, here's the stuff I need to think on, is whether or not we need to add more nodes in here. So maybe there should be like another node that goes up here and then like two to the left, or maybe this one should branch off, or maybe this one can continue and there's like a actual group of 4 and you can kind of choose your way of upgrading these. You could upgrade here and then here, or you could upgrade here and here. Like these could be more complicated, or we could make it so that these stat increases are larger. I think that eventually we do want to get to like stats that are at like the 255 level, and getting all the way through chapter 1 and upgrading all these stats, we're getting up to 11 attack and 11 defense. Like that's not bad. It's like it feels okay for the mini slime and the big slime, but it definitely if we're gonna get 4 stat points in attack over the course of all of chapter 1, then I'm gonna need to get 240 more strength stats by the time we get to the end game, which we're looking at chapter 8. So I just feel like 1/8 of the way through the game, we should be at like 1/8 of the way through our stats. So what is 255 divided by 8? So we should be at around 31. Like we could be a bit lower and like start on the low end. Maybe we max out at like 20 attack, and then in some later chapters we have a much bigger growth pattern of how much attack we're gaining. But like gaining 4 points feels low. So either we need to add more nodes that give more points of strength and potentially more health, or we need to take the nodes we already have, and this shouldn't be an attack strength increase of 1, but maybe it should be like 3, and maybe this one should be an attack increase of like 5. Yeah, it just depends. Like more nodes means I also need to give experience more freely. So maybe the experience curve needs to be even lower, but having this, like you gain 3 skill points, but each of these nodes have big stat increases, maybe that's better. There's just a decision point. So, and it could be a mix of both. Maybe I need to add more nodes and make the stat numbers bigger. Like maybe it's a mix of both. But I got to think about that. I got to think about that progression curve, which will be tied to the number of nodes, so they're related. And I also want to think about how difficult some of these enemies are and how easy they get as you progress through chapter 1. Should this boar always be this difficult, or do you eventually get your stats high enough that his attacks aren't so brutal? Should his stats come down, or should I be giving you more? I don't know. There's a lot to think about. So I'm gonna stop here. I'm going to give a lot of that stuff some thought. This is going to be helpful for kind of just working through some of those ideas. This scene was definitely something I wanted to build for a while, and it came together relatively easily. Yeah. We'll be back next Sunday, 2 to 4, and from 6 to 8 PST. We're trying to do every Sunday, doing it as game dev streams. That's all I got. Discord, things, stuff, like, comment, subscribe, I guess. I don't know. I hate doing these outros, but I don't know how to end it. So for now, this is Tolly signing out. Later, folks.